For decades, the world's most powerful nations have fought, bribed, and politicked to control a few narrow strips of water. If you control the Suez Canal or the Strait of Malacca, you effectively hold a leash on the global economy. Over 80% of all international trade moves by sea, and right now, that trade is funneled through aging, congested bottlenecks. But while the world is looking at the Middle East and Southeast Asia, a quiet revolution is happening in the freezing north. A new superpower is emerging, not through military conquest, but through geography. Canada is sitting on a gold mine that is about to melt, and it's a shift that will bankrupt current trade routes and redraw the map of global power forever. The Arctic. For centuries, it's been nothing but a graveyard for explorers and a wall of impassable ice. But as our planet warms, that wall is coming down. What's being revealed is the holy grail of maritime logistics, the Northwest Passage. This isn't just a new shortcut, it's a disruption so massive that it could turn Canada into the next global trade hub, rivaling the influence of the United States or China. But as the ice thins, the geopolitical tension is thickening. Everyone from Washington to Beijing wants a piece of the Arctic, and Canada is finding itself at the center of a high-stakes tug-of-war. To understand why this frozen wasteland is suddenly the most valuable real estate on Earth, we first need to look at who actually owns the Arctic. It's not just one big white void. The Arctic region is a collection of territories surrounding the Arctic Ocean, divided among 8 main players. First, you have Canada, which holds a massive portion of the northern and northwestern territory. Then there's Denmark, which gets a seat at the table because it controls Greenland, the world's largest non-continental island, where 85% of the land is buried under ice. Then we have Iceland, hanging onto the edge of the Arctic Circle, and Norway, which has nearly half of its landmass inside the circle, including the strategic Svalbard Islands. Sweden and Finland follow close behind with their northern reaches. But the biggest player in terms of sheer size is Russia, boasting a 15,000-mile coastline and home to half of the entire Arctic population. Finally, there's the United States, which bought its way into the club in 1867 when it purchased Alaska from the Russians. So, why does any of this matter for your next Amazon delivery or the price of gas? Because of 2 specific paths, the Northern Sea Route and, more importantly for North America, the Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is the legendary shipping route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Canadian Arctic archipelago. For 500 years, humans have been obsessed with finding this shortcut to Asia. Back in the 15th century, Christopher Columbus sailed west specifically looking for a faster way to the east. He hit the Americas instead, but even as explorers pushed further north, they were always beaten back by the ice. It was considered a myth until 1906. A Norwegian explorer named Roald Amundsen did the impossible. He set off in a small ship in 1903, and after 3 grueling years of navigating frozen mazes, he reached Herschel Island in Canada. He proved the passage existed, but for the next 100 years, it remained commercially useless. It was too dangerous, too icy, and too expensive. That changed in 2013. A Dutch container ship was scheduled to go from Vancouver to Finland. Usually that ship would have to head south, pay a massive fee to cross the Panama Canal, and then head back up the Atlantic. Instead, they took a gamble on the Northwest Passage. The result? They shaved 4 days off their journey and saved a staggering $80,000 in fuel costs alone. When that ship docked, the maritime world woke up. If you look at the map, the logic is undeniable. Currently, a ship traveling from Japan to Western Europe has to trek 13,000 miles through the Suez Canal. If it goes through the Northwest Passage via the Bering Strait, that trip is cut by 6,000 miles. Think about the scale of that. We're talking about cutting nearly half the distance. That means less fuel, fewer crew wages, less wear and tear on ships, and lightning-fast delivery times. Current projections suggest that by 2040 or 2050, the Arctic will be so ice-free during the summer that standard container ships, not just specialized icebreakers, will be able to breeze through. When that happens, the Panama and Suez Canals won't just lose traffic, they'll lose their relevance. The Northwest Passage will become the primary artery of global trade, and Canada is the one holding the scalpel. But here's where the professional friendship between nations starts to crumble. In the world of geopolitics, money of this magnitude creates massive friction. Canada claims the Northwest Passage as internal waters. In their eyes, this is Canadian territory, just like a highway in Ontario. They want to regulate it, tax it, and provide the search and rescue infrastructure for it. They argue that because the route winds through their islands, they are responsible for its safety and environmental protection. The United States, Canada's closest ally, says, absolutely not. Washington's stance is that the Northwest Passage is an international strait. They want it to be free for all, meaning any country can sail through without asking Canada's permission or paying Canada's fees. This puts Canada in a tough spot. If they can't enforce their sovereignty, they lose out on billions in potential revenue. But Canada's argument is actually quite practical. If a ship leaks oil or gets stuck in a remote Arctic channel, the US isn't going to be the one cleaning it up. Canada will. Therefore, Canada should be the one in control. And then there's the wild card, China. China doesn't even have a border on the Arctic, yet in 2018 they officially declared themselves a near-Arctic state. Why? Because China's entire economy is built on manufacturing and exports. Right now, their ships have to pass through the Strait of Malacca, a narrow point that the US Navy could theoretically block in a conflict. For Beijing, the Arctic is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. It's a route that avoids US-controlled choke points and cuts weeks off their shipping times to Europe. China is already pouring money into Polar Silk Road initiatives. In 2023, they sent their first domestically built icebreaker into the region for research. We all know that in the world of global strategy, research is often code for staking a claim. This creates a fascinating dilemma for the US. If they keep bullying Canada and refusing to recognize their claim, Canada might look elsewhere for support. Russia and China have already hinted that they might support Canada's sovereignty over the route, not because they love Canada, but because they want to set a precedent that benefits their own Arctic claims. If the US doesn't play ball with Ottawa, they risk pushing their northern neighbor toward a temporary alliance of convenience with their biggest rivals. Most experts believe the US will eventually cave and recognize Canada's claim. Why? Because a Canadian-controlled Arctic is still a Western-controlled Arctic. It's a far better outcome for Washington than a free-for-all where Chinese warships and Russian tankers roam the North American coastline at will. For Canada, the stakes couldn't be higher. Their economy is already heavily reliant on the sea. In 2022 alone, shipping ports generated over $150 billion in revenue and created 300,000 jobs. If the Northwest Passage becomes the world's main transit corridor, those numbers will look like pocket change. We are talking about a total economic transformation. Canada wouldn't just be America's neighbor anymore, they would be the gatekeeper of the 21st century. However, Canada isn't the only one with a shortcut. While the Northwest Passage is the prize of the West, Russia is aggressively developing the Northern Sea Route on the other side of the pole. This route is even further ahead in development, and it's a path that could make the Russia-China alliance an economic juggernaut that the West can't touch. The battle for the North is just beginning, and the ice is melting faster than the diplomats can talk. The map of the world is literally changing, and for the first time in history, the coldest place on Earth is becoming the hottest flashpoint for global power. If you want to see how Russia and China are planning to use their side of the Arctic to bypass the West entirely, you're going to want to see our next deep dive on the Northern Sea Route. We're already working on it, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this global chess game. What do you think? Should Canada have total control over the Northwest Passage, or should the world's oceans remain free for everyone, regardless of whose coast they're on? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.